Hello and welcome back to my indie devlog, where I foolishly try to make a game in 2 months and release it on Steam. It's currently Wednesday of the second week of that process, and I've got some news and some progress to share with you. I ended the previous episode talking about how I had some performance issues with the existing character controller, and how I was going to go ahead and replace that. So first things first, I've gotten that out of the way and that's done. And with that, I'm able to have a good number of enemy AI on the screen at once. So that's good. That's one big component of the gameplay test that I have in mind. Kind of good enough. Now, while I was working on that, I was also working on incorporating a company to distribute this game with. So I'm happy to announce that that has been completed and I have officially incorporated a company in Canada. And that company is called Devlog Games. So yes, my new company is called Devlog Games. Now, why did I choose Devlog Games? I'm not sure. I've been branding myself as Steph Devs, so I guess it kind of came from that. But really, it's just kind of fun to say, Devlog Games. And not only is it fun to say, but it's also pretty easy to relate to game developers. You know, you might think of who made that game again, or who developed that game again. Dev. I don't know. It seems to me that it'll probably be pretty easy to remember, but it's also just really fun to say. Devlog Games, Devlog.games, Devlog. I don't know. I think it's really fun. So yeah, I'm excited to get some branding done on there and get this Steam page up, and that's really exciting. So speaking of the corporation and the company, and that implying that I'm working with others, I officially have a musician on board, a music producer, a good friend of mine, Rob Wilson. He's already doing crazy work. I asked him about the project, I think on Monday, and then like 10 minutes later he had some music done for me. We were like, and it sounded really, really great, and it's awesome. I'm really excited for that. This game is going to potentially sound very, very good. I'm actually really tempted to give you a listen to that little clip right now, but I'm fairly certain that Rob would just murder me in my sleep if I did that, because well, that's about as rough of a cut as you can get, and even though it sounds good to me, to him, it does not hit his perfectionist standards. So I'm going to do him a favor and not give that away yet, but do look forward to hearing some music in the future. Now, next up in the timeline is weapons and customization, weapon parts, loot, that kind of family of concepts that is in this game design. So I've spent the past day or two on the weapon system in the game, and I'm going to show you that now. Now, the idea here is to have a large number of weapon parts that are interchangeable and that you can assemble into completed weapons. And there's quite a lot of complexity and logistics to how this is going to work. That's all very complicated, and I'm not sure how to explain it exactly. I'm sure if I sat you down in front of the code, I could walk you right through it. But to kind of summarize things, I'm struggling here. So I'm just going to show you it working. So for one, I swapped out my old placeholder model here with a much, much worse looking one, but at least we have the representation of the player being a human technology. It's metal. There it is. It's a metal frame, I guess. But then it holds the crystalline, or did I even talk about this stuff previously? Do you guys know anything about this? I'm not sure. Look, the point is that we have our player core, the frame, the ship, and then we have weapons attached to it. Right now, there's only one weapon attached, and I'm still figuring out some stuff to do with having two weapons. Can I have two different weapons? Are they kind of just one weapon, but then I duplicate it so that you have two? There's some stuff to figure out there, but anyway, for now, we just have one weapon, and you can see when I run into an enemy, looks like I've done some murdering here. The enemies also have only one weapon currently, but something new is that they're different. So the enemies have a different weapon from what I have right now. And that's big progress. So currently, when I start the game and I spawn the enemies or spawn the player, I'm just giving them one of two weapons. But really, this system will allow players to define their own weapons and to build them out of parts. Let me show you real quick what that kind of looks like. Let's look at the definition of the player's weapon as it is. Okay, so currently the player, when I'm spawning the player, he's getting his weapon from right here. Weapon starter, right? And the enemy's getting it from there. What's really going to happen at the end of the day is that this is going to come from the player's inventory and like save file. But anyway, so this points to a weapon assembly, as I'm calling it, which is a assembly of multiple components. So right now I only have one component, but this is built so that I can have multiple, but I just wanted to try the minimal case. So I have one weapon component, which is called a receiver. So here we can click on that and we can see all of the parameters that the receiver controls. So on the receiver, we have control over the rate of fire, we have a damage multiplier, we have projectile speed, and we have a couple things to do with the visuals. So we have a prefab, which references to the actual object that I'm going to spawn to represent this visually in the game. And I also have this other settings file for the projectile. So what this is going to mean is that when I install like a different barrel, I can have it shoot lasers, or I can have it shoot, you know, explosives or whatever. Now I also did some extra work to make sure that I can edit all this while playing on the fly, so I don't have to restart the game every time I change it. So right there, I just slowed down the projectile speed. Let's make it like something really slow so you can see. I just realized my screen was still zoomed in there, but just to show you, this is what I was doing. Making the projectiles real slow, and I can do that on the fly. So I can make them quicker. Bang, bang, bang. There we go. So hopefully in the near future, you'll see this system grow a little bit, and you'll see some different weapon components. You know, the barrel versus the receiver versus the mag, etc. And hopefully maybe add in some animations, this or that, make it look nicer. But for now, this is the minimal viable thing I need to get this gameplay test going. The last part that I need to do is to do item collection, item drops, and inventory, and the UI for the inventory. So I said it's the last thing, but really it's kind of like 4 things, but the deeper you go, like the more things it is, so whatever. The point is I have a way to create weapons, I just need a way for players to collect and manage those. Now, item collection I'm not worried about, that's like that one's actually really simple. But the more daunting thing is the UI. There's going to be quite a bit of UI to go into actually assembling these components and managing your inventory of components. And so that's what I'm working on next. And I figured before I jump into that, I would do a quick update and make sure I got this stuff off of my mind so that I don't forget about it by the time I'm done with the UI. Okay, so I think that's it for this update, which is good because I'm running out of window light and I kind of want to get outside before the sun goes away. So as always, thank you so much for watching. I'd really appreciate you guys watching and giving your feedback in the comments, and I really look forward to getting the game in your hands to get more feedback from you. There's plenty more exciting news to come, including maybe a Discord channel. But yeah, see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Okay, so the next big thing that I need to do here, and the last thing I have to do kind of is when I'm shooting projectiles, I need to get the appropriate stats from the appropriate places, like the projectile range and the speed and the damage and all that. But now that's coming from different places, like different weapon parts, and it might be a combination of different stats from different weapon parts. So I can definitely do this right now, and I know exactly what I need to do to like reference the parts with the appropriate stats. But the problem is that I know that as soon as I'm done doing that, I'm going to turn around and add more weapon parts that have different stat modifiers. And then all of that code will have to be adjusted because it's all hard-coded. So I'm very tempted to do some kind of meta level where in the code I can configure what parts do what, and then have this part kind of go through that and find the stats that it needs to from the parts that affect the range or speed or whatever it's looking at, and generate the final damage numbers, the final whatever, and that way I can add and remove different kinds of weapon parts and have a much more flexible system. Now the downside is that I know for a fact that doing this kind of stuff, anytime you try to do meta programming kind of tasks like this in C#, it sucks balls. Maybe in this case there's a way to do it, and maybe I can find a new way to do it that I haven't been able to in the past. But I don't know if I want to go down that rabbit hole right now. I'm probably just gonna like